There are two types of rejection, the kind that screams and the kind that silences. My family chose silence. There were no dramatic fights, no cruel words shouted in moments of anger. Just nothing. Years and years of nothing. Of being invisible in my own home. Of speaking and nobody hearing. Of achieving and nobody noticing. My name is Victoria Hayes, 32 years old. Luxury interior designer. Owner of a $3 million mansion in one of Seattle's most exclusive neighborhoods. And the best part? My mansion is right next door to the house where I grew up. The house where I was ignored for an entire decade. I grew up as the invisible daughter. While my younger brother, Daniel, shined at every basketball game, every academic award, every achievement, I was the weird girl in the corner with sketchbooks and ideas nobody took seriously. Victoria is always in the clouds, my father would say, as if dreaming were a disease. She needs to grow up, my mother would sigh, as if maturing meant giving up who I was. We lived in a comfortable suburban house in Maple Valley, just outside Seattle. My father, Richard Hayes, worked in corporate real estate. My mother, Patricia, was a substitute teacher who spent most of her time managing Daniel's schedule and achievements. I was 17 when I realized I was invisible to them. It was my high school graduation. I had been accepted to the Rhode Island School of Design, one of the most prestigious art and design schools in the country. Full scholarship. I was so excited. Finally, recognition for my talent. Finally, proof that my dreams weren't just fantasies. At the graduation reception, while other parents took photos and celebrated, mine were focused on Daniel. He had just finished his sophomore year and made varsity basketball. Daniel might get scouted by college teams, my father told everyone who would listen. Nobody asked about my acceptance letter. The one I had shown them 3 times, hoping for a reaction beyond, "That's nice, honey." That night, alone in my room, I cried. Not from sadness. From clarity. I finally understood. I would never be enough for them. Not because I wasn't talented or successful, but because I wasn't Daniel. The breaking point came during Christmas dinner, 4 years later. I was 21, home for the holidays during my senior year at RISD. I had been building a portfolio, networking with design firms in New York, dreaming of launching my own interior design business after graduation. The table was set beautifully. My mother always went all out for Christmas. Daniel was there with his girlfriend, Ashley, a cheerful blonde who hung on his every word. My parents were in their element, asking about his job prospects, his basketball coaching opportunities, his future. I waited for a break in the conversation. "So, I have some exciting news," I said during dessert. My mother looked at me with mild interest. "Oh." "I've been offered an internship with a design firm in Manhattan. It's unpaid, but it's an incredible opportunity. They work with high-end residential clients, luxury hotels, celebrity homes. If I do well, there's a chance for a full-time position after graduation." I waited for congratulations, for excitement, for anything. My father set down his fork. "Manhattan is expensive, Victoria. How exactly do you plan to support yourself with an unpaid internship?" "I'll find roommates, get a part-time job. I've been researching." "This is exactly what we've been talking about," he interrupted. "These impractical fantasies. You need something real. A stable job. Benefits. A future you can count on. Design is real, Dad. It's a legitimate career. For people who can afford to take risks," my mother added gently, which somehow felt worse than my father's bluntness. "You're very talented, honey, but you need to be realistic. Maybe you should consider teaching art. That's stable." "I don't want to teach. I want to create. I want to design spaces that—" "Daniel got offered a position at a marketing firm," my father said, turning to my brother. "Tell Victoria about it. That's the kind of opportunity you should be looking for. And just like that, the conversation shifted back to Daniel. I sat there, invisible again, while they discussed his success, his potential, his future. I excused myself before dessert was finished. Went to my childhood bedroom, the one that still had my high school art projects on the walls because nobody had bothered to update it. I looked around at this room, this house, this family that had never seen me. And I made a decision. The next morning, I packed my bags. My mother was in the kitchen, cleaning up from the night before. "You're leaving early?" she asked, not looking up from the dishes. "I'm leaving," I said. "And I'm not coming back." Now she looked at me. "Victoria, don't be dramatic. Just because we're concerned about your career choices, you're not concerned. You're dismissive. There's a difference. That's not fair." You know what's not fair? Being treated like a disappointment my entire life because I'm not Daniel. Because I want something different. Because I dare to dream. We just want what's best for you. No. You want me to be someone I'm not. Someone safe. Someone who doesn't challenge you to see beyond your narrow definition of success. I headed for the door. "Victoria, wait. Tell Dad I said goodbye. Tell Daniel congratulations on whatever accomplishment he has next. And tell yourself that you had a daughter who needed you to believe in her, and you chose not to." I left. Got in my old Honda Civic. Drove away from that house. And I didn't look back. The first year in New York was brutal. I took that unpaid internship. Lived in a shoebox apartment in Queens with 3 roommates. Worked nights as a waitress at an upscale restaurant in Soho. Slept 4 hours a night. The design firm I interned for was prestigious but cutthroat. I was the errand girl, picking up fabric samples, organizing swatches, making coffee runs. But I watched. I learned. I absorbed everything. My parents never called. I didn't call them either. I saw on Facebook that Daniel got married. Had a baby. Got promoted. My parents posted constantly about their grandchild, their successful son, their perfect family. I wasn't in any of the photos. It was like I had never existed. Year 2, I was hired full-time at the firm. Assistant designer. Low pay, but real work. I started getting my name on projects. Year 3, I managed my first solo client, a Park Avenue apartment renovation. The client was difficult, the budget was tight, but I delivered something beautiful. Photos of the space were featured in a design blog. Year 4, I left the firm and went freelance. It was terrifying. Most months, I barely made rent. But I was building something mine. Year 5 was the turning point. A tech entrepreneur who had seen my work hired me to design his Tribeca loft. He gave me complete creative freedom and a generous budget. The result was stunning, a blend of industrial edge and warm minimalism that got featured in Architectural Digest. Suddenly, I had clients. Real clients with real budgets who valued my vision. By year 6, I hired my first assistant. By year 7, I had a small team and an office in Chelsea. By year 8, I was working with celebrity clients, designing luxury penthouses, and being invited to speak at design conferences. Year 9, I launched my own product line, Victoria Hayes Home, a collection of furniture and accessories sold in high-end stores. The business exploded. 6-figure contracts became 7-figure contracts. I was profiled in magazines, featured on design shows, invited to exclusive industry events. And through all of it, my family never reached out, never acknowledged my success, never said they were proud. I told myself I didn't care, that I had moved on, that their opinion didn't matter anymore. But I was lying. Deep down, I wanted them to see, needed them to see. Not for their approval, but for their regret. Year 10, I got the opportunity that would change everything. The call came from Marcus Chen, a developer I had worked with on a Manhattan project. Victoria, I have something that might interest you. I'm developing a luxury property outside Seattle. Custom mansion on 2 acres. The client wants someone who can create something extraordinary, modern but warm, impressive but livable. Your name was the first one I thought of. Seattle. The word made my heart skip. Where in Seattle? I asked carefully. Suburb called Maple Valley. Gorgeous area. Old money neighborhood. Maple Valley. My hometown. The budget is substantial, Marcus continued. $3 million for the build and interior design combined. And if you're interested, the client is open to you purchasing the property yourself once it's complete. They're primarily an investor. They just want to build something beautiful and profitable. My mind was racing. Send me the details. That night, I looked at the property plans. The address made my breath catch. 447 Oakwood Drive. Right next door to 445 Oakwood Drive. My childhood home. The property had been vacant for years, an old house that had been torn down. The lot was beautiful, with mature trees and a gentle slope. Perfect for a modern architectural masterpiece. I could build my dream home. Right next to the people who told me to stop dreaming. The irony was too perfect. I called Marcus the next morning. I'm in. And I want to buy it when it's finished. Excellent. When can you fly out to see the site? Next week. I hung up and stared out my office window at the Manhattan skyline. 10 years. 10 years of silence. 10 years of building a life they knew nothing about. And now I was going home. Not as the invisible daughter. As the designer of a $3 million mansion they'd have to look at every single day. I flew into SeaTac Airport on a gray Tuesday morning in March. Everything felt surreal. The last time I had been in Seattle was that Christmas 10 years ago. The city had changed. More tech buildings, more traffic, more expensive. I rented a car and drove to Maple Valley. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The neighborhood looked exactly the same. The same old trees lining the streets. The same perfect lawns. The same sense of quiet suburban satisfaction. I pulled up to the vacant lot at 447 Oakwood Drive. And there, right next to it, was 445. My childhood home. It looked smaller than I remembered. The blue paint was fading. The garden was overgrown. The basketball hoop where Daniel had practiced was rusted. A strange feeling washed over me. Not nostalgia. Not sadness. Just distance. Like looking at a place that belonged to someone else's life. I got out of the car and stood on the empty lot. It was perfect. Flat enough for building, with enough elevation for incredible views of the valley. I could see it already. Floor-to-ceiling windows, clean lines, natural materials. A home that was everything that blue house next door wasn't. Modern, bold, unapologetically beautiful. Can I help you? I turned. A woman was standing at the property line. Late 60s, gray hair, kind face lined with age. My mother. She was older, thinner, tired-looking, but definitely her. She didn't recognize me. Just looking at the lot, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I heard someone's building here. Oh yes, she said, warming to the topic. We've been wondering who bought it. This lot has been empty for years. We're excited to finally have neighbors again. She said we. So my father was still alive. Still living in that house. Do you know who's building? She asked. I smiled slightly. I think you'll find out soon enough. It's such a beautiful area, she continued, not catching my tone. We've lived here for 35 years. Raised our children here. It's a wonderful community. Children, plural. As if I had been part of that raising. As if I still existed in her version of family history. That's nice, I said. I hope the new owner appreciates the neighborhood. I'm sure they will. Are you with the construction company? Something like that. Marcus pulled up before she could ask more questions. I turned away from my mother without another word. Victoria, Marcus called, walking toward me with blueprints. Ready to create something amazing? I looked back at my mother. Her face had gone pale. She had heard my name, but I was already walking away. Construction began 2 weeks later. I stayed in Seattle to oversee every detail. This wasn't just another project. This was personal. I rented a luxury apartment downtown and commuted to the site daily, watching the foundation go in, the framing, the walls rising. Every day, I saw my parents' house next door. Sometimes I'd see my father leaving for work, my mother in the garden, their cars coming and going. They never approached the construction site, never came to talk to the workers or the architect. But I knew they were watching. 3 months into construction, my mother appeared at the property line again. I was there with the contractor, discussing window placement. I saw her hovering, clearly wanting to talk but unsure. Finally, she walked over. "Excuse me," she said to the contractor. "I'm the neighbor. Just curious about the timeline. When will it be finished?" 6 months, weather permitting, he replied. "And who's the owner? If you don't mind me asking." The contractor looked at me. I nodded. "She is," he said, gesturing to me. My mother looked at me directly for the first time in 10 years. "Victoria." "Hello, Mom." Her hand went to her mouth. I didn't realize. You're building this. Designing and building it." "Yes." "You're going to live here?" "In Maple Valley. Right next door to you. Convenient, isn't it?" She looked like she might cry. "Victoria, I didn't know you were back. We would have. You should have told us." "Why?" "So you could ignore me in person instead of from across the country." "That's not fair." "We didn't ignore. You didn't call. For 10 years. Not once. You left. You said you weren't coming back. I left because I was invisible to you. And you proved me right by never reaching out. Not for birthdays. Not for holidays. Not ever." The contractor awkwardly excused himself. My mother stood there, tears running down her face. "We thought you wanted space. Your father said we should let you come to us when you were ready." "I was never coming to you, Mom. I was busy building a life, a career, a future. Everything you told me was impossible." "We never said impossible. You said impractical. Unrealistic. A fantasy. Might as well be impossible." She looked at the rising structure, the steel beams, the modern architecture, the obvious expense. "You did all this?" "I did all this. Interior design for luxury clients. My own product line. Projects featured in major publications. Everything you said I couldn't do." "We're proud of you," she whispered. I laughed bitterly. "Are you? Or are you just shocked that the invisible daughter became impossible to ignore?" Before she could answer, I walked back to the construction site. The house was completed in September. It was magnificent. 3 stories of glass, steel, and natural wood. Floor-to-ceiling windows that captured the valley views. A rooftop deck. A home office with custom built-ins. A chef's kitchen with Italian marble. 5 bedrooms, each with its own design personality. Every detail was intentional. Every choice was mine. I held a small housewarming party. Marcus came. Some of my Seattle clients. The architect. A few designers I had met through local industry events. The neighborhood noticed. Expensive cars lined the street. Catering trucks. A string quartet on the deck. I wore a white silk dress and felt like royalty in my own castle. Through the windows, I could see my parents' house. The lights were on. I wondered if they were watching. At sunset, as guests mingled on the rooftop, I saw my father standing in his backyard. Just standing there, staring up at my house. Our eyes met across the fence. He looked old, defeated, small. I raised my champagne glass in a silent toast. He turned and went inside. The party lasted until midnight. When everyone left, I walked through my empty house, turning off lights, the sound of my heels echoing on the polished concrete floors. This was mine. All mine. Built with no help from them. No approval needed. The invisible daughter had bought the biggest house on the block. And they had to look at it every single day. 3 months after I moved in, Daniel showed up at my door. I almost didn't recognize him. He had gained weight, lost hair, and looked exhausted. The golden boy had tarnished. "Victoria," he said, awkward and uncomfortable. "Daniel, can I come in?" I considered saying no, but curiosity won. "Sure." He walked through my house, taking in the design, the space, the obvious wealth. "This is, wow. This is incredible. Thank you." We sat in my living room. He looked around nervously. "I'm sorry I never reached out," he started. "After you left. I should have called." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." Silence. "Why are you here, Daniel?" He took a deep breath. "Things are bad. With Mom and Dad. Dad's been sick, heart problems. Medical bills are piling up. His real estate business took a hit during COVID and never recovered. They're in debt. Serious debt." I felt nothing. No sympathy. No concern. Just cold curiosity. "And you want what from me?" "Mom wanted me to ask. She couldn't bring herself to call you directly. But they need help. Financial help." There it was. 10 years of silence. And now, when they needed money, suddenly I existed again. "Let me understand this correctly," I said slowly. "For 10 years, I didn't matter. My success didn't matter. My life didn't matter. But now that I have money, suddenly I'm worth remembering." "It's not like that. It's exactly like that. They're your parents, Victoria. They raised you. They raised Daniel. I was just there." He had the decency to look ashamed. "You're right. They favored me. I knew it even then. I was an asshole for never saying anything." "Yes, you were. But they're still family. And they're in trouble." I stood up. "You know what's funny? If they had called even once in the past 10 years, just once, to say hi, to ask how I was doing, to acknowledge my existence, I might feel differently right now, Victoria. But they didn't. They only care now because they need something. That's not family. That's convenience." I walked to the door. Daniel followed. "I can't help them," he said quietly. "Ashley and I are struggling too. 2 kids, 1 income since she stopped working. I don't have the kind of money they need. And I do. Yes. Because I built something. Because I worked for it. Because I didn't give up when people told me my dreams were impractical." I opened the door. "Tell Mom I'll think about it." I didn't sleep that night. Part of me wanted to ignore them. Let them face consequences. Let them feel the abandonment I had felt. But a bigger part of me knew that revenge through cruelty wasn't who I was. I had succeeded despite them. Not because of some burning need to prove them wrong, but because I loved what I did. Because I had found my purpose. Hurting them now wouldn't change the past. It would just make me bitter. The next morning, I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. Victoria, I want to come over. Silence. Then, okay. When? This afternoon. I hung up before she could respond. At 3 o'clock, I walked next door. Strange, how I had driven across the country, but walking 20 feet to my childhood home felt like crossing an ocean. My mother opened the door. She looked like she had been crying. Come in, she said quietly. The house looked sadder than I remembered. The furniture was old. The paint was chipped. Photos of Daniel and his family covered every surface. No photos of me. Not even old ones. My father was sitting in the living room. He looked frail. Sick. The man who had once seemed so strong and certain now looked breakable. Victoria, he said, standing with effort. Thank you for coming. I sat across from them. The same couch where we had had that last Christmas dinner. Daniel told me about the situation, I said. My mother twisted her hands. We're so sorry to ask. We know we don't deserve. You don't, I interrupted. You don't deserve to ask me for anything. You ignored me for a decade. You made it clear I didn't matter to your family unless I fit your idea of who I should be. My father looked at the floor. We were wrong. Yes, you were. We thought we were protecting you. From disappointment. From failure. We didn't understand that we were just pushing you away. My mother was crying again. I'm so sorry, Victoria. I'm sorry we couldn't see you. Really see you. I'm sorry we compared you to Daniel. I'm sorry we made you feel like you had to leave. I felt something crack inside me. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something softening. I'm not doing this for you, I said clearly. I'm doing this because holding on to this anger will poison me more than it hurts you. I'm doing this because I want to move forward without this weight. I pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check. This covers your medical bills and outstanding debts. It's a gift, not a loan. I don't want to be paid back. I don't want gratitude. I don't want some reconciliation where we pretend the past didn't happen. I stood up. I'm doing this so I can look at myself in the mirror and know I'm not the kind of person who lets people suffer, even people who hurt me. But don't mistake this for forgiveness. Don't mistake this for family. My mother reached for my hand. I let her take it, briefly. I hope someday you can forgive us, she whispered. Maybe, I said. But not today. I walked out, back to my mansion, back to my life. And I felt lighter. Winter came to Maple Valley. I watched snow fall from my floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of wine in my hand, soft music playing in the background. Next door, my parents' house was quiet. Sometimes I'd see my father walking slowly to get the mail. My mother in the window, looking out. They didn't approach me again. Didn't call. Didn't try to force a relationship. I appreciated that. The holidays came and went. I flew to New York to spend Christmas with friends. Posted photos on social media of my life, my success, my happiness. My mother sent a text. Merry Christmas, Victoria. We love you. I didn't respond. But I didn't delete it either. Some wounds take time. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and new beginnings. I was in my home office when the idea came to me. My mansion had 5 bedrooms. I only used one. All this space, all this luxury, just for me. What if I used it for something more? Within 3 months, I had transformed the lower level into a creative studio. I launched a mentorship program, Victoria Hayes Creative Initiative, for young women trying to break into design, art, and creative industries. 6 women lived in my extra bedrooms. Free housing, free mentorship, access to my network and resources. In exchange, they worked hard, learned, and paid it forward when they succeeded. The first cohort included a girl from rural Montana, a single mother from Detroit, an immigrant from Vietnam, a woman who had aged out of foster care, a recovering addict trying to rebuild, and a transgender woman who had been rejected by her family. I saw myself in each of them. Why are you doing this? The girl from Montana asked during our first dinner together. I looked around the table, at these women who had been told they weren't enough, who had been rejected, who had been invisible. Because someone should have done it for me, I said simply. Because success means nothing if you can't lift others up with you. Because the best revenge isn't proving them wrong, added the woman from Detroit, smiling. It's becoming so successful you forget you ever wanted revenge. Exactly, I said. Through the window, I could see my parents' house. My mother was in the garden, planting flowers. She looked over and saw us through the window, all of us laughing, working, creating. Our eyes met. She smiled sadly and waved. I waved back. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But acknowledgement. Connection. The possibility of something more someday. 6 months later, Daniel came over with his kids. We sat on my deck while they played in the yard. You're doing something amazing here, he said, watching the women working in the studio below. I'm doing what I wish someone had done for me. I'm proud of you, Victoria. I know I never said it before, but I am. Thank you. Do you think we can be family again? Eventually. I looked at him, this man who had been given everything I wasn't, who had been loved in ways I hadn't, who was now trying to bridge a decade-long gap. I don't know, I said honestly. But I'm willing to try. That evening, after everyone left, I stood on my rooftop deck and looked out over Maple Valley. The invisible daughter had bought the mansion. But more importantly, she had built a home. Not just for herself, but for others who needed to be seen. And that was worth more than any revenge.